good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are viewing from in the world. Welcome to the Silent Forgotten YouTube channel. I'm your host Chris, and today I'll be sharing with you the life story of and visiting the final resting place of the Canadian politician and entrepreneur William James Paul, July 9th, 1854 to September 1st, 1929. This will be a new segment on the Silent Forgotten YouTube channel, which is called Famous Graves You Probably Never Heard of, or maybe you have.
William James Paul was a Canadian politician and entrepreneur. He represented the electoral district of Lennox and Addington in the Canadian House of Commons in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, from September 21, 1911, to December 5, 1921. He was born one of 9 children to Robert Paul, 1828 to 1915, and his wife Mary Stewart Paul, 1834 to 1903, in Sheffield, Ontario, Canada, on July 9, 1854. His siblings included Peter McGregor Paul, 1856 to 1914, Neil Stewart Paul, 1857 to 1924, Annie J. Paul, 1859 to 1906, John McLay Jack Paul, 1862 to 1936, Robert Johnston Paul, 1862 to 1946, John George Paul, 1863 to 1946, Donald Cameron Paul, 1865 to 1947, David Wilson Paul, 1871 to 1931, and Roland Manfred Paul, 1875 to 1942. He was educated locally in the common public schools of Camden, Ontario, Canada, and Sheffield, Ontario, Canada. He worked primarily as a farmer, in the lumber industry, and the cheese industry, before pursuing an interest in politics. He was married to Nancy Close, 1852 to 1920, in Camden, Ontario, Canada, on October 18, 1875. The couple had at least 5 children together, including Harvey Stuart Harv Paul, born in 1876, Ross Cameron Paul, born in 1878, Mildred May Paul, born in 1881, William George Paul, born in 1890, and Annie Bell Paul, born in 1893. He began his career in politics as a member of the Sheffield Council, where he served as both Reeve and Commissioner for approximately 10 years. He then was elected by a significant majority to represent the riding of Addington to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario beginning in 1905, replacing the outgoing James Reid, 1848 to 1926. His candidacy was so popular that in the general election of 1908, he was returned to office without opposition. While serving in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, he also served as a member in the Provincial House, and on a variety of standing committees, including Agriculture and Colonization, Standing Orders, and Privileges and Elections. He left office following his term in 1911, and was replaced by the incoming William David Black, 1867 to 1944. A member of the Conservative Party of Canada, he then decided to run for a seat in the Canadian House of Commons in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and was elected to represent the electoral district of Lennox and Addington, replacing the outgoing Conservative Party of Canada member Uriah Wilson, 1841 to 1918, in 1911. He began his term in office on September 21, 1911, and began serving in the Conservative Caucus fully on November 15, 1911. He continued as a Conservative Party of Canada member until the Conscription Crisis of 1917, which was a political and military crisis in Canada during World War I. It was mainly caused by disagreement on whether men should be conscripted to fight in the war, but also brought out many issues regarding relations between French Canadians and English Canadians. He then joined with the newly formed Unionist Party of Canada, and was elected to serve fully in the Unionist Cacaus on March 18, 1918. He continued with his duties in the Canadian House of Commons in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, until his final day in office on December 5, 1921. He was replaced in office by the incoming Progressive Party of Canada member Edward James Sexsmith, 1865 to 1946, shortly thereafter. He had served a total of 3,729 days, 10 years, 2 months, and 16 days in office. During his time in office, he had also remarried following the death of his first wife Nancy in Tamworth, Ontario, Canada, on September 28, 1920, at the age of 68. He was married to Margaret Webster Simmonds, 1868 to 1936, in Carleton, Ontario, Canada, on August 20, 1921, and the couple remained together until his death on September 1, 1929, at the age of 75. They had no children together. He passed away following a long illness in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, on September 1, 1929, at the age of 75. Following his death, he was buried in the family plot in Tamworth Cemetery in Tamworth, Ontario, Canada, alongside his first wife Nancy. His second wife Margaret passed away in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, on January 25, 1936, at the age of 67, and she was buried in Mount Royal Cemetery in Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Hi guys, here I am at the Tamworth Cemetery in Tamworth, Ontario, Canada. And as I mentioned, we will be visiting the final resting place of the Canadian politician and entrepreneur William James Paul, also known as W.J. Paul, July 9th, 1854 to September 1st, 1929. So let's get started, shall we? Now, I never researched this cemetery before I came here, but I will show you around and do a walking cemetery tour of this location in the near future, as this is one of the two large cemeteries in this area. I would like to do both cemeteries, but I don't have time today, as I would like to photograph the headstones as well. So this will just be a famous graves of people you may probably never heard of before, or may have. So I'm just going to start showing you around the cemetery a little bit, and then we will work our way over to William James Paul, also known as W.J. Paul, Canadian politician and entrepreneur. So I'll show you around first, and then I will give you a little bit more bio information on him as we get closer to the grave. As I said, this is Tamworth, Ontario, Canada, and it is a fairly large cemetery. So as I said, today I'll just scan around so you can see, and then another day I'll come back and do a full cemetery walking tour, which will be number 3 or 4 or 5, whichever route I go. So this is an older cemetery, as I said. I believe the burials go back to about 1854, and it's still open to new burials as of 2024. There's a neat one. Jim Charles Lucas, 1947 to 2020, and Helen Elaine Richmond, 1948 to 2020. There's a lot of traffic in this town today. It's the Canada Day celebrations. As you can hear the sirens and stuff going on. So there are about 3 sections. So we'll just go for a walk. This is the back view of the cemetery. So we'll start or continue into the middle section here. As you can see, Tamworth Cemetery. A few old stones here. This actually is not too bad, but I've never been to this one, so I'll come back and I'll take some pictures, whatnot. When I have more time. Yeah, so this, I guess I'll call it segment, is going to be called Famous Graves That You Probably Never Heard Of or May Have. People who aren't relatively well known, but they did lots for their community or in Canada. the gentleman we're going to visit is right by the gate, so we'll just skip over his grave for now, and I'll move into the middle of this section, and then we'll continue on to the other side. We'll go to the back. There's a columbarium. I'll show you that. For some reason, all the graves are facing this way instead of facing out to the road, which is odd. So some names like York, Heimers. Always like the old war graves, if I can find them. Oh, there is one over there I will show you. Actually, two of them. They always make interesting stories for the channel. So this one says 835298 Private Herbert J. Thompson, 4th Battalion, Canadian Mounted Rifles, January 3rd, 1921. Thank you, sir, for your service to your country. And on the bottom it says, he was so young, so brave, waits to welcome us beyond the grave. May you rest in peace. Thank you. Here's another one over here. And this is A. Calvin York, Gunner, RCA, which is Royal Canadian Army. I think that's what that is. May 8th, 1963, age 59. Thank you, sir, for your service. It's glad, he survived and came home to his loved ones. A couple more up here. Let's get back over to this row. There's a couple of older ones over here. There's a neat new one. Excuse me on the camera. This is Fleming. It's kind of hard to read. I left my torch, as they say over in Ireland, in the car. So I remember it next time. These are more modern day stones. We don't have a lot of interesting ones like they do in Ireland. Shout out to my friends Serenity Sue. Great visitations. Check out their channels. They do awesome jobs and find very cool locations. Hopefully one day I can get my channel as big as theirs. And maybe I'll get some merch going. What have you. So we're going to backtrack. Couple other little ones I want to show you over here. Neat little architecture on them, or carvings. Well, that's just the rock, but still, that's pretty cool. Cars garden. Neat little one over here. It's got like an urn on the top. And then we have one over here. It's like a, I don't know, like a globe. That's pretty neat. So then we'll walk back up here again. Like I said, again, I'll do a cemetery walking tour another day, and then I'll show you more of the stones and stuff up close, and or you can pause the video and look at it yourself or what have you. So go over this way, and then we'll go. There's a car coming in, so I don't want to catch them on camera. And then I'll show you over here. Here's a neat one here. A. Fred McKnight, 1895. It doesn't say when he died, but his wife Mildred A. Campbell McKnight, 1890 to 1923. Another old one. Gilmore, that's pretty cool. Robert Gilmore. This is a neat little one too. Gentleman only passed away when he was 30 years old. Selwyn G. Storing, born August 7th, 1879, died September 22nd, 1909. So, somebody is visiting, so we'll go over here for now. I'll show you the columbariums. And then we'll do that section over there. And then we'll go visit William James Paul, aka W.J. Paul. So I will show you from this distance. One is open, so they must be getting ready to put some ashes in there. Beautiful cemetery. And there. And there. Neat little bench there. The sun is shining, so I'll try to get a view from this side. Neat little and there and there. Okay, I will show you this one over here. As you can see, there's still room for more burials here. So some of these are newer, but I'll just show them to you. There's some interesting names and pictures and stuff on them. As you can see. Neat little benches. Get off the gravel here. You can hear my feet or the gravel under my feet. So guys, we're coming up onto the person I'm going to tell you about. So I have to pause the video so I can rearrange my notes, and then I will be back. But I will continue up here, and I'll go show you this tall one over here real quick. Some over here. Sorry, we're on a major road here, and so you can hear voices and dogs in the background, I think. So this one is neat. This is Cars Callan. I guess that's not Cars Cadden, like over the R. So guys, I'm going to pause the video for a minute, and I'll be back. Hi guys, welcome back. So this is the entrance here. This is the Tamworth Cemetery, as I said. And we're going to be visiting William James Paul, aka W.J. Paul. Now I'm just going to read from my notes a little bit about him. So William James Paul, July 9th, 1854 to September 1st, 1929. He was a Canadian politician who served in the legislature of Ontario from 1905 to 1911 and in the Canadian House of Commons in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, representing the electoral district of Lennox and Addington from 1911 to 1921. He was a member of the Conservative Party of Canada for most of his life. He was born in Camden, Canada West, the firstborn of 7 sons and 1 daughter, on July 9th, 1854. He was educated exclusively in the common public schools of Camden and Sheffield. Before entering politics, he worked as a farmer and within both the lumber industry and the cheese industry. He began his political career in the Sheffield County Council, where he served as Reeve or Commissioner for approximately 10 years. In 1905, he was elected by a significant majority to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario as representative for the riding of Addington. So popular was his candidacy that in the general election of 1908, he was returned to office without opposition. As a member of the Provincial House, he served on a variety of standing committees, including Agriculture and Colonization, Standing, Orders, and Privileges, and Elections. He was elected to the House of Commons in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, to represent the electoral district of Lennox and Addington on November 15th, 1911, to serve in the Conservative Caucus. He continued on as Conservative MP until the Conscription Crisis of 1917, when he joined with the newly Unionist Party. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. He was elected to serve in the Unionist Caucus on March 18, 1918, and finished his final term in the House of Commons on October 4th, 1921. He passed away in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada on September 1st, 1929, at the age of 75, and was buried in the Tamworth Cemetery in Tamworth, Ontario, Canada. He was married twice, first to Nancy Close Paul, 1850 to 1920, who was buried beside him, and second to Margaret Webster Simmonds Paul, whom he married in 1921 and who survived him. He was the father of 2 children, a son named Ross Campbell Paul, 1878 to 1945, and a daughter named Annie Bell Paul, 1893 to 1981. Now, this is all the information I have on him at the moment. So when I get more information, I will add it to the bio information and the description box of the video. So let me show you his grave. So here is the Paul grave. The sun is shining, so let me see if I can get a good view. I will show you the back of it, and he's pretty right inside the gates, so it wasn't hard to find at all. So here is William James Paul, 1854 to 1929, also known as W.J. Paul, the Canadian politician and entrepreneur. This is his wife, Nancy Close, and there's his daughter, Anne. Here is a Harold Carroll Paul. That could be his grandson. There is a Paul here, and they could be related as well. And then we have a W. Ross Paul here, so that could be a grandson or great-grandson as well. So this concludes this famous graves that you probably never heard of, or maybe you have. So if you like this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe to the Silent Forgotten channel. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye for now.